up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Success After Trauma. I'm your host, Greg Pihs, and today we have a very special guest that's going to share his story about some of the trauma that he's been through and then the success that he is achieving in today's standards. If you have a story, if you've experienced trauma in your past, and if we're being honest with ourselves, all of us have probably had trauma at some point in time in our life and at some level, and all of our trauma is relative. What we do with our trauma is what matters. Some people get stuck in that place, and if you're stuck in that place, reach out. Let's see where maybe I can help you, or I might be able to connect you with a nonprofit organization or someone that will be able to help you. And some of us decide that this won't be the end. We decide that we're going to do something with this, that we're going to repurpose our trauma. We're going to pull our unique gifts out, and we're going to go out and serve the world. And today's guest, Dalton, has done just that. Dalton is a successful real estate agent out here in Middle Tennessee. Dalton, how long have you done real estate?
A little under 2 years, actually.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I thought maybe a little bit longer. Dalton is with Keller Williams, and Dalton has recently. Dalton, would you share before we get into your story around trauma? Will you share a little bit around what you're doing today? Because I know you have had some recent successes with Keller Williams as being part of one of the expansion teams. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we get started?
Absolutely, Greg. Yeah, so I had the amazing opportunity to be a what they call an anchor, which is like a team leader out here in Tennessee as the expansion grows for this group, United Home Groups. They're growing throughout the United States. We're in 26 states now, and I'm the first anchor to be in Tennessee. And so
That's
I am
exceptional.
the leader to expand us in Tennessee. So that was a fantastic opportunity, only being in real estate for a little under 2 years. It was very exciting to get that opportunity.
Speaks volumes for what you bring to the table in terms of leadership. And while Dalton has, and he's going to share a little bit about the trauma that he's been through, and he has decided to, again, to repurpose that trauma. In addition, you also bring to the fight being a veteran, which is near and dear to my heart. Tell us a little bit about your service as well. What branch did you serve with? How long did you serve? And tell us a little bit about what job you did while you're in the military.
Yeah, so I was in the Army. I spent 5 years total in the Army. I was going to go all 20 years as a diesel mechanic for a little bit, and then I was going to try to switch over to the Special Forces groups. However, things took a turn, got a little injured, um, and so I decided to repurpose myself somewhere else. So again, I was a diesel mechanic. I went to Ranger selection, SF selection, Airborne Air Assault, all the fun schools, and I just decided after 5 years, it was time to kind of exit because my purpose was going to be served somewhere else if I couldn't reach the highest level. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I tell people all the time I enjoyed my time in and I enjoy my time out. It's really a place where we when we serve, we're fighting for our freedoms, and being out is where we actually get to enjoy some of our freedoms, which is nice. And like you talked about, you now have the ability to serve not only buyers, sellers, investors, all of your clients, but now you're in a position where you're able to serve other real estate agents too, and that's pretty awesome. Tell us a little bit. So I know I got to hear a little bit behind the scenes, a little bit of Dalton's story, and you guys are going to get to hear more about it. I had no clue some of the things you've been through. And so for those of you that are listening in, as you may have heard with some of our other guests, you're going to hear some things that are going to be cringeworthy. Dalton's going to share candidly with you a little bit of, and I say a little bit because let's be real, in the next 30 minutes, he can only share certain highlights of his life. He's going to share some of the things he went through, what that created on the mindset, and how he shifted to create the mindset that he has to today. Dalton, can you share with us a little bit around where would you say, can you take us to the beginning, maybe one of those first pivotal moments where you experienced trauma?
yeah, I mean, it's very clear for me where the first point of trauma came from. I lived a really good single family, single parent life until I was about 6 years old. I lived with my mom until I was six, and life was good. I just go play outside. Sun was always shining. It felt like go play the Nintendo 64, whatever. But then all of a sudden, my mom had abandoned us, just up and left to another state, left us behind with my father, who I didn't know at the time. Little did I
Wow.
know, my father wanted nothing to do with us. So that kind of continued this was the start of the trauma, um, moving in with my father at six.
So you guys had no clue when your mother had left, you had no inclination that this was even going to take place?
No idea. It was such a
Wow.
surprise. It was like being ripped from the only thing you knew and the only stable thing you had in life. Uh, I was there every single day with my mom and my brothers and sisters, and all of a sudden, not only was I ripped from that stability, I was ripped from half of my family.
Wow.
Two of my siblings got to go with my mom, and two of us went with my dad
Oh
because
my
we were a
gosh.
split family, and so everything that I had built up to that moment was just ripped apart, and it felt like one day, just one decision, just ripped apart.
And prior to this, you had a healthy relationship with your mother prior to this? She was always there, loving, caring, taking care of you guys up
Yeah,
until this
I
point?
I think at the age I really didn't know what was going on in life, and so if she had trauma, she was very well versed in controlling them so she could raise the 4 children that she had at the time.
Wow. So tell me a little bit. Literally I can only imagine what this would be like. Tell me a little bit about tell us a little bit about your experience. So dad, how quickly does dad come in the picture and what does that look like?
So, I mean, immediately I was taken from my mom's house to my dad's house, and you really get the sense that you weren't wanted as soon as you show up. You're put in a room, get all your stuff thrown in that room, not spoken to other than to told to be shut up, be quiet, stop crying because I was crying. Um, and so for the next, 8 years, that was my life: was shut up, be quiet, don't don't speak unless spoken to. I don't want to see you. Stay in your room. Um, so th- yeah, I will stop
I
there for
can't.
that question.
Yeah, yeah, man. I can't imagine. So talk to me a little bit about what is the mindset at this point in time. So there's an 8 year span where you're experiencing trauma from your father, and it sounds like there was a lot of passive aggressive trauma and then maybe even some aggressive trauma. What is the mindset at this time? What are you thinking as between the age of 6 and so you said 8 years roughly, somewhere early teens?
Yeah,
What are you thinking about what are your thoughts about yourself? What are your thoughts around what is the future? What do you think the future looks like at this time? Talk to me a little bit about that.
my dad was very physical with us growing up. Anytime there was a noise that he didn't appreciate, getting our butts handed to us, and so the instant emotions that I conjured up was survival. If
Okay.
that was an emotion, right? So you kick into survival mode. What can I do to not feel the pain, to be hurt, to be hit? One of the biggest events in my life was being hit with a cast iron pan. Like, what can I do to stay away from the 2x4, the PVC pipes, the making sure dad is not angry? You know, the the survival mode kicks in, and nothing else. I mean, you don't think about anything else. You go to school. I just started school at that time. You go to school, try to avoid people because you were afraid that they would cause the same trauma that was going on at home.
Wow. So I didn't know. So up until this point, I was thinking that there was maybe psychological trauma, but I didn't know this is all out physical beatings in the house.
Right. And my dad, I learned this word obviously later. I learned my dad was very good with people. And so there was never a question. My dad was very much narcissistic in his tendencies and was able to portray himself as, that good supporting father when people are around, or if the school called because I had, a bruise on my eye and they wanted to know where it came from. He played a very good role of, oh, I'm putting him in sports. We were just, trying to make sure he was tough, playing the guise of the good guy. But at home, life was dangerous.
Wow. And I can only imagine through I've had some similar experiences really starting to what would you share? I don't want to project what I experienced on your experience. What would you share around did you start having um a lack of trust for around so all these people like your dad was duping all these people and so no one's there like the people that should be helping you are not there helping you.
Mhm.
Did that build a certain level of distrust or what was that like for you?
Yeah, I felt like I couldn't trust anybody. I mean, I even had a stepmom at the time that was allowing this stuff to happen. And for me, I very young understood this was not correct because I grew up very healthy. And so I knew that this was wrong. But when the teachers would talk to my father and not talk to me about what happened, I was like, well, these people, they're backing him up. To me, it was
Right.
as if they were backing him up. And so I was pinned in a corner. If I told my story, not only was I going to feel the wrath of my father again, but then I was probably going to be told that that wasn't happening.
So did your dad have so two you and was it a brother that went with you when mom
It was
sister?
me and my older sister, and she was my full blood sister, my only full blood
Okay.
sibling.
Okay. Is there other siblings in the house?
Yes.
In your
So
dad's
we
house?
yes, so we had a stepbrother. His name was Joshua. And not only were we trying to survive from my father, my brother Joshua, he was 12 when I moved in. So he was 6 years older than I was. And I don't know what kind of demons he was fighting at the time, but he was actually sexually abusive to me. I mean, I cannot recall a night where I was not like being drug into his room after my dad had fallen asleep, and gruesome things being done to me as a kid. And so,
Wow.
you grow up, and it's so crazy because in my head I'm thinking like I did not want to get close to anybody because everybody in my life at that point was hurting me.
I can only imagine. No one there wasn't a place where you could feel safe. There wasn't a person that was safety, and so it creates this mindset. And I'm projecting here. Forgive me, correct me anywhere I'm wrong, but again overlaying my experiences. But you get to the place where no one is safe in the world. Like you have to guard yourself against every single human being, and it's just such a lonely place to be. Was your stepbrother? Was he? Did you witness him being abused at any time?
So he was quite a bit older than I was and bigger than I was, and I always assumed that was why I never saw my father really abusing him. Also, he was part of another family, so I felt like he had ties of protection somewhere in that way.
Wow.
So his life was very much different than my life. My dad had full control over me, but he had family on the outside of our family that were always checking in, making sure he was good. But I had heard he had went through some trauma in his life with his actual father growing up.
Wow. And then what about did you see was your sister part of the trauma as well?
She was very much so, and we have extensively talked about just the trauma we went through and the therapy that she's had to get into because of the life. She started doing some drugs and drinking a whole lot, and unfortunately, she went through almost exactly the same thing that I went through. Unfortunately, and we've watched our lives kind of change because of that.
Wow. I still want to get a little bit more information around what did that transition begin to look like as the older adolescent, older teenage years and of that nature. But I just really want to highlight right now where we're at. Man, look at where you're at today. Look at what you're doing for other people. Look at how you're serving other people. It's incredible what you've done with your journey. I just wanted to take a second to highlight that because look where we were in your story of being in that place where nobody is safe and everyone is against me to that place of I'm here to help you. Let me help you. That's incredible that you've made it to here. Let's. I want to talk a little bit about where or when does the transition take place away from did you live at your dad's house all the way until you're 18 or what does that look like?
Right. No. So when I was about 15, 15, 14 and a half, there was an event that kind of kicked me to just being like, I'm done. At this point, my stepbrother has moved out. He got kicked out when he was 18. And we'd moved into another house. We moved around quite a bit. And my father had met another wife, and I'd got another brother and another sister. And my sister that I'd grown up with, Sam, is her my full blood sister. She'd actually ran away from my dad's house about 2 years prior to this event,
Mm,
um, and got out. And that again felt like an abandonment because she was the only thing steady in my life. Again, we'd been through the same thing, and she just disappeared. Didn't say a word. She just was gone. So she'd run away, and I learned later she'd moved in with my mom, who'd came back to the Washington State again. And but anyway, this event. So my stepmom at the time was honestly a saving grace. She was a great woman. She was feeding us. That was another problem growing up, is my dad wouldn't actually feed us. He wouldn't make meals for us. If we wanted food, we had to actually sneak out when he was sleeping and go get things out of the kitchen. And this new stepmom would actually feed us. And so she was a saving grace, wonderful woman, and she decided that we were going to go to the movies. This is the first family event that I really think that I'd been to with my family before. At the time, she'd gotten me braces because my teeth were all jacked up from my dad pulling them out with pliers or stuff like
Wow.
that. And when we went, the kiosks started coming out. There was a new thing where, like, if you had your ticket online, you could go up and scan your ticket on a piece of paper and it would print out. So we didn't have to go up and talk to somebody at the counter. And I had walked in behind my father, and my brother and sister had walked in front of me, my stepmom to my left, and then my brother and sister to my left and right. And then my dad was directly in front of me. I was about 6 foot tall at this time. My dad's about 5'6", and he was looking for this kiosk, and I just walked in behind him. I don't know if I bumped into him or what was going on in his mind, but this was the first activity, or this was the first time that he had done something in public. And so as we were standing there, he was looking for this chaos. You could feel the frustration in him as he was just starting to see he couldn't find this kiosk. And I don't know what happened, but he turned around and just bam, backhanded me. I fall
Mm.
straight to the ground. My mouth is smashed into my braces. I'm bleeding inside of my mouth. And I lay on the floor trying to figure out what is going on. Like, I don't know what caused this event. I was standing there, trying to be as quiet as I could. Um, and I look around, and again, the first time this happened in public, and I look around and nobody said anything in the whole theater. They just stared.
Mm.
And that, like, broke me inside because at that point I'm 15. I'm thinking like people will stop him.
Right. I can only
But
imagine that feeling of like looking up thinking like, "Oh, you're in trouble now," and then looking around and like, "Oh, wow, no one cares." I can
yeah,
only imagine what that felt like.
yeah, there was dread. It was honestly dread because I felt like that was my only out, was finally somebody's gonna take him to jail, somebody's going to, beat the heck out of him for me. Like, I don't know what I was expecting, but that was not it.
Yeah. That's
So I mean, that event was a catalyst for me being like, I'm done with this. Um, I didn't say anything the whole movie. We got done with the movie. My dad ripped into me about, if I didn't want to live with him, then I could just leave. And that was like my ticket. Like, oh, I can leave next
right.
day, pack my stuff up, call somebody I know from school. They come pick me up at the house. I'm gone.
So tell me so did we end up going back to dad's house or we're gone for good right there?
We're gone for good. So
Dude,
at
that's
that
awesome.
moment, I had my sister's phone number, and so I called her. I was like, "Hey, where does mom live? I'm coming to move in." So that event happened. I moved in with my mom, didn't say a word to my father, just left.
Wow. So talk to me about what was it like moving back in with mom?
Yeah, it almost sounds to me when I say it that it should have been some fairy tale ending for me, but it wasn't. I mean, I hadn't known this
Yeah.
woman my whole life.
Right.
She left when I was 6, and so I was already kind of angry because she put me in this situation.
Right.
She was still loving, she was still sweet. She had a little bit of a drinking problem, and we didn't get along. It was like trying to have an authoritative figure that was a stranger.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get along with her. So that only lasted about 6 months. Excuse me, sorry about that.
Oh, I'm
Um, that
silly.
lasted about 6 months. We'd gotten in a small argument about a cat. She had kittens. She had kittens at the time. She'd come back drunk from the police station. Actually, the police had drove in her home because she's drunk so often. They would just drive her home. Um, Dropped her off. She went to bed. Came back up the next morning. I'm eating oatmeal, sitting on the couch, shirtless, just eating some oatmeal. I mean, my life felt good at that point, minus
Mm.
minor inconveniences. I felt like I was living the life. I'm just sitting on the couch eating some oatmeal. My mom stumbles out, pissed off at this cat because it meows, picks it up, and throws it outside. And I didn't say anything. I didn't think there was anything going on. And so I walk outside after she leaves. I grab the cat, I put it on my lap, eat my oatmeal outside, and we get in an argument about, if you don't like the way I live my life, then you can leave. Second time I hear that in my life, okay. I started working. I had earned some money. I bought a car from my grandparents. Thank goodness they let me buy their car. It was a little beater Ford Explorer. I got in the car, packed anything I wanted up, and I left. And I slept in my car for, um, what is that, 4 or 5 years, I think.
Wow.
Hmm.
So just where? So you're still? Are you still in school at this time or no?
Yep. And so I was still in school, still in high school. I was working one, two, sometimes three jobs at a time. But my goal was to never let that stop me.
Yeah.
I may have been homeless, but there are people that had worse and still made it farther. And that's what I just kept reminding myself is we were in an age where information was just flooding in. YouTube, I was a big YouTube kid. Like anytime I could get a hold of YouTube, I was watching these inspirational stories, these people rag to riches, rag to riches. I was like, they can do it. They went through worse than I did. They didn't have family. They didn't have anybody that was their protector. Maybe that's good or bad, depending on the situation, but they made it. And so I
So there.
knew, it could happen.
So other people's story became evidence for you of what was possible. And
Right.
once you've seen, and I'm just paraphrasing here, so fill me, correct me anywhere. So once you've seen what was possible, you made a decision that I will make that a reality. It's possible, just like that. That was a possibility, just like being poor was a possibility. That was a possibility, just like being a felony was a possibility. It was an equal possibility, and it sounds to me like you said, I'm going to make a decision to make that possibility reality. Like we know it's only a possibility right now, but one of these possibilities out there will become my reality, and I'm committing to that one.
Yes.
Dude, I love it. So what about, tell me about when you're out interacting with people, how are you how are you projecting yourself? I know sometimes when I know there's periods of time in my life, sometimes we can be people maybe you may or may not have experienced this. We can be almost even embarrassed of our trauma sometimes. So we go out and we can sometimes we'll paint a picture like everything's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong here, nothing to see. How was when you ran away and you're out, you're working, you're showing up? Does anyone know the conditions that you're living in?
There was only a few people that knew. Actually, my siblings didn't even know because I would pop in periodically and give them cash for school or something like that. They just assumed I was out all the time. But there was a few people that knew, like the gym teacher, because I needed somewhere to shower. I told him every day, "Hey, I don't have a place to shower. Can I come in early, take a shower at school?" And he would let me. Thank the Lord for his name was Gaylord Strand. I love that guy to death. He was my wrestling coach as well. He would let me come in to take a shower in the morning. He knew. And then few of my friends knew that I was not living at home anymore. They didn't know I was sleeping in my car a lot of the times because it just didn't seem necessary.
Right, 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 right. I can only
And
imagine.
like you said, it was embarrassing. I didn't want people to know. I wanted everybody to think everything was fine. That my life was totally normal. Everything in the past is gone now. Like if they saw that, they wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't be around me. They'd call me one of the things that one of the kids said when I was in elementary school was you're the stinky kid. And that stuck in my head. And so I was
Mm.
like, they're not going to know I was the stinky kid because if they know I'm the stinky kid, they're not going to want to be around me. So when I got into high school, this time I was in high school now, I created a whole new Dalton. It was a version that nobody had seen before because I didn't want them to know what I went through. And it's funny you bring that up. When I was 21, so I graduated high school. I busted my butt to make sure I graduated high school. Came out with a 2.5 GPA. Thank goodness I could even make that. 2 3 hours of sleep a night because I was working so much. Um, Went to college for a little while, didn't work. Went to the military, and the first unit I got to, there was a soldier that showed up the same time as me, little country kid. Um, and he was like, "Why did you become a mechanic? You look like a spoon-fed little." I don't want to curse on your podcast, but he
You can
said you look
send it.
like,
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
So he said you look like a spoon-fed little bee. You look like you don't want to get your fingernails dirty. And I said, "Good. I didn't want you to think anything happened growing up." And I told him that, and he's like, "What the heck does that mean?" And I just let it be. But um,
I can only imagine. It's crazy how we think, and I say we just from um sharing, my experiences. It's crazy how we think, how we get locked in our head that we're damaged goods with our trauma. We're damaged, and then what's crazier is thinking that everyone else is pristine.
mhm.
In actuality, they've all experienced trauma too. And I don't mean to install that. If someone's listening and you say, "Well, no, I haven't experienced trauma in life," I think that's a blessing, and be grateful for it, and that's awesome. Um, most of us, if we're honest, we've experienced trauma. We're not, and I say we, I'm speaking me and you, Dalton, and everyone else that aligns with it. We're not damaged goods. And an equal truth is everyone else is not pristine. We're all so hurt. We all have
Right.
been hurt in different ways. And okay, so let's dive into where does so when I first met the first time I met Dalton, I forget who made the introduction, and it may have been Dalton just personally, may have just reached out to me. But you had a passion to be a motivational speaker. You share I didn't even know the depths of your story, but you shared to me, said, I have a passion to be a motivational speaker. I want to change people's lives. And we sat down, we had a little conversation, we soundboarded some ideas, and that's becoming more and more and more of a fruition for you. You're holding leadership billets, you're doing exceptional things in the real estate industry, and you've even don't you even have actually you have a speaking engagement lined up here in the future, near future, don't you?
So I have a speaking course coming up. I'm getting
Okay.
certified by John Maxwell. Don't have any. I have competitions coming up through the Toastmasters Association, International Association. Those are more towards other Toastmasters. They're just improving your speaking. But yeah, when we met, I was just starting this journey. It was in October of last year, I believe, and um, I'd been inspired at one of the Keller Williams trainings we had. It's called Bold. I was a graduate of Bold, and there was a speaker there that he was talking more about the way you live your life and not what you portray your life as. And I think as realtors, a lot of the time we get caught up in the life of glamour instead of dealing with what we got going on in our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it kicked me right in the butt because I knew since I was a child, I knew that my story was going to be something that somebody could see and say the exact same thing I said. Whether or not I had to be my own hero or not, somebody is going to see this story someday. And even if it's just one person, they're going to see this story and they're going to say, if he did it, I can do it too.
That's right.
Right. And
Where was Oh, go ahead, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Where was Talk to me about, as best as you can remember, when was the shift that I got to help other people? When was the shift? Like some people make it out of that rut and they start making progress and then nose to the grindstone, and it becomes, and to each their own, right? We're all at different levels. But it becomes like about me, 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 me. Some people become very, very financially successful by putting the blinders on their traumas and other areas of life and just really focusing on this thing. Somewhere along the way, you popped your head up and said, I got to help those people back there. What was Talk to me a little bit about that. Where did that shift come in place? How did that feel for you? What's the calling to say, hey, there's people still back there. I gotta loop back.
It was actually a pretty cool event that I went to when I was younger. Right after I'd moved out from my parents' house, I'd given my life to Jesus and became a Christian. And there was a significant event right after that that had shown me that my story can impact others. And it continued to grow more and more. And the passion became harder to avoid as I got older and realized like this needs to be said. Um, but when I was about 16, I went to an auction event. I don't know if I even told you this, but I went to an auction event and there was a chance for someone to speak about their life and how um, this Christian camp had impacted it, and it was to get people to spend more money at this auction. And I was like, I had a great time at camp. I gave my life to Jesus. Like, I can do a story. Like, I'll tell people about my story a little bit. And so I said, "Hey, I'll do it." I was 16. I didn't know how to speak at all, but I was like, I mean, I'll give it a try. Like, if I can get these people to give us more money for this, this organization that helped me figure out that there's good people out in this world, and I didn't have to protect myself all the time. I'll do it. And so I did this speech, and I remember starting it out, row your boat, and then your mother leaves. And it was just like a weird mic drop, like not really a good start to a speech, but it
Mm-hmm.
really grabbed attention. Then I just explained my story, and I watched the faces of the people in the crowd, and like some of them were crying, some of them were like sipping on their drink, like sinking back in their seats, like they didn't want to hear anymore because it was making them uncomfortable. And that was a recognition to me that these people had experienced some kind of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not they wanted to admit it to themselves or others, it inspired them, luckily, to pay more money for this organization. But to me, it was
Mm-hmm.
understanding now that my story being told can inspire others to do just what I'm trying to do.
Wow. That's incredible. So at the age of 16, you're able to read the room and say, hey, this just had an impact on people.
Right.
And so that planted a seed for you. So talk to me a little bit about as that seed continues to grow into fruition, how did over the years, so at 16, we had the first realization that, wow, we have something that can help people, like, because you've seen it. How did that, pardon me, how did that continue to grow for you? Where did that grow from there? Talk to us a little bit about from there to where we're at now. Now we're doing professional trainings. We're doing Toastmaster. We're where how did that evolve and escalate to where it's now?
So from that point, I didn't really know where to go with it. So I just pointed it towards the kids at school. Kids at school that were having a tough time. I tried to be the best model I could of just happiness. Just, life is going to be okay. We can make it through this together, whatever it looks like. I didn't want a sad soul in that school. And so I became the very happy kid that um, was trying to drive people to me to make sure that they were going to be happy. And that was just the small events I could control as a kid. Then I got into the military and I could see the leadership potential. And I knew as a leader, you can change lives. And so my first goal, make it to an NCO as fast as possible, a non-commissioned officer as fast as possible. So 2.5 years, I think it was 2.5 or 2 years and 8 months, I made sergeant. And I was like, now I'm going to start
That's
changing
awesome.
people's lives. Now I have the control over what I can do,
Ability.
what I can say to help people change their lives. And so I started just pushing, pushing, pushing. We all go through a weird leadership phase, I feel like, when you become an NCO, where it's a battle
Yeah,
between do I control people or do I inspire people?
that's right.
Um,
Yeah.
and watching that growth, becoming the controlling NCO to the inspiring NCO, watching that as my years went on and on, just filling that bucket up for me. Just my soul started burning with this passion. Then I got out and it flatlined because, like a lot of veterans,
I
we don't know what to do.
Yeah, and I've experienced, I have my own experiences with it, and then every time I get to work with veterans, you hear it over and over again. And what I realized a lot, for if you're a veteran out there and you're experiencing similar to this right now, or if you've experienced it in the past, listen, reach out. I want to share your story on the podcast because someone's one chapter behind you, and they need to hear it from you. Everyone's story touches someone. Okay, it actually touches more than one, but it speaks to certain people in certain ways. What I experienced, or what I realized myself, one of the pieces that happens with veterans, and again from my own experience and seeing with other veterans, is that we become, especially when we're younger and we join the military, and again speaking more so for myself, it becomes an identity, which is really cool when we don't have an identity, but then when it's stripped away, we feel like the essence of who we are was stripped away from us. And the truth of the matter is, that was just one of the things we did. We're so much bigger than that ever could have been. Our essence could never fit inside of that. It could only fit inside of our essence. So we were not, we operated, we carried the billet of a warrior at whatever level, whatever branch we're in, whatever thing we did, we carried that billet, but it was just a piece of what we did. But at once upon a time, again speaking for myself, and you may experience similar. Once upon a time, that piece of who we were, we seen as the totality of who we were, and then in the absence of it, we became no one. So a lot of veterans face that time when they got out, and they're like, "Who am I?" Tell us a little bit about that. How did you regain your footing? How did you realize that you had a purpose bigger than what the military ever could have been?
Yeah. So recently, after I, or not recently, excuse me, after I'd gotten out of the military, I decided to go into real estate. I decided I was going to be a real estate agent just because I love the idea of investing. Money was a big deal to me. I wanted to make sure that I had enough money. Not knowing I didn't grow up with money, I wanted to make sure that I had enough money that when I had kids, they had some money to be able to do and have choices. So I was like, investing, investing, investing. What's the best way to understand what investing looks like? Real estate. How do get into real estate? Get my license. So
Dude, I
I
can I dive in real quick? I'm so sorry. I'm diving on you. For those of you who are listening, I've said in the past, and I'll say again, and Dalton just clarified what I'm about to say. Do not work for money. Work for knowledge. No one can ever take the knowledge from you, and with the knowledge, You can produce and create any amount of money you want. Dalton said, he didn't say, I joined real estate because I needed money or because I wanted money or because I thought I could make money. He said, I believed investing to be the answer to protecting my and my kids' future, and I needed to learn how to invest. And he's seen this as the best vehicle to learn how to invest. When you go to work, don't work for money, work for knowledge. I'm sorry, Dalton, I had to hop in on that one.
That was awesome. I love that actually. And I guess I didn't even realize I said it, but it really is true. We need to seek knowledge. If we invest in ourselves, it needs to be in knowledge, and then we can choose to monetarily invest when we understand it.
I
But
love it.
yeah, I got into real estate and I was honestly still lost for a long time. That flatline happened for that first year until October when I met you. I had, I'm sorry if you hear those in the background. I have two Dobermans that might be barking in the background.
Okay. I don't think we're catching them yet, but if so, that's awesome. We'll hear them in.
Yeah, I hope not. But anyway, so in October, I went to this Keller Williams event, and this is where it sparked, where my passion had been burning in my soul for so long. And this bold event had shown me that if my passion was not to be the best real estate agent I could be, then what was it? And to use that to fuel my career. My passion was to change, be transformative for people and show them that they can make it farther in life. And I'm still on this journey of transitioning my life and growing. But this event kickstarted me like if I'm not looking to make this an opportunity, it won't happen.
That's
So
right.
what do I need to do? I need to start reaching out to people like Greg. I had heard about you actually, and then we talked about this earlier. There was a female there that I was on a team with. Her name was Danielle, I believe, and she had
She's
introduced
awesome.
me to you. She's a
She's
rock
awesome.
star,
Yeah.
and she had introduced me to do. And she's like, "Yeah, if you're gonna do this, you should meet Greg." And so you were actually the kickstart, believe it or not. You were the first
Super
person I
awesome.
talked to about starting this journey. So, and this is a very, evolving journey right now. And I'm watching it, the things you focus on grow, and I'm focusing on it. Just, it feels like nonstop a lot of the time. And I'm watching it slowly just bloom into more and more. And I'm excited as it continues.
Dude, I'm watching you grow I'm getting to watch her from the outside looking in, and it's just been incredible. And your evolution in speaking, in processing your trauma, in sharing with others, and empowering others. I really, really can't wait to see where all of it goes. Let me ask you a little bit, and the fact of the matter is, wherever we're at on our journey, and for everyone listening, I have a belief, so you don't have to believe it if you don't. I'll share it with you. That it's very important that we know what the very next step is. I believe we have to know what the very next step is. And I believe we also have to know our why, or what's the big picture. Why are we doing this very next step? What's the thing that we want? However, I suggest with people to be very flexible. Like, I do not commit to the middle part of the journey. Let that middle part of the journey lie as it does. I know that this is the very next step. And as soon as this step is done, I need the very next step. So I always have to have the very next step, but I don't know what step two, three, or four is. Because if you learn what step two, three, and four is, you'll learn why you're not able to do it. But if you just keep doing the very next step, whatever part you can't do, you say, oh, I'll have to shift the course over here. That's why I don't get married to where the route is, because I'm willing to change that route all day, every day, as long as we keep heading to this predetermined location. All right, I say that to say, I'm sure you're building a lot of entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur out there, we jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down. Tell me a little bit about though, what can you share with us? Some things may still be in the mix. What can you share with us around what does the future look like in the realm of speaking, inspiring, coaching for you, Dalton?
Right. So as I said earlier, I'm in Toastmasters and I'm using that to develop my speaking skills, getting rid of my uhs, ahs, ums, eliminating things that are not going to be fruitful for the audience. So I'm using that as an investment in my knowledge. And then I also am invested in John Maxwell. He's one of the largest leadership coaches in the world. Um, and so I invested into a certification course where I can be certified to train, speak, and coach through the John Maxwell systems, models, and trainings,
That's awesome.
and hopefully certified by the end of August. As well, I am looking to get branded here soon. I know that was actually one of our first conversations. Is what does branding look like? so I can start pulling people into my community and being able to be that breath of fresh air to them, while also them knowing like, hey, this is Dalton's breath coming to you. So the knowledge, I want to be able to share it, but without a platform to share it on, you have to, build the foundation first, right?
That's
So
right.
that's in the works.
That's exceptional. You nailed it. Creating your community. I tell people all the time. I know Dalton, you already know this to be true, but for all the other listeners out there, 7.85 billion people on this planet, or at least that was the last time I checked. A few more babies probably been born. 7.85 billion people on this planet. I don't care what your weird is. There's people that will show up and support your weird. I'm a weird guy. You guys are listening in right now. All of you listening. It doesn't matter what your thing is. You got to build your tribe because there's people one chapter behind. Right now, Dalton's story, one of you that are listening, and again, I'll narrow it down to one. The truth is more than one. Dalton is going to change one of you heard this story, and your life will forever, the trajectory will forever be altered. You and Dalton may or may not cross paths. You may have the opportunity to thank Dalton. Dalton, you may have the experience to realize some of the people that you changed past just on this podcast. But even if you guys never cross paths, we can't unalter the trajectory that's been changed for the people that have heard this story. Dalton, before we break out of here, so I want you to just take a moment, if you will. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but don't worry about all the ums and ahs. I just want you to speak from the heart for a minute. I want you to share, what about that person that doesn't believe that they can break out right now? It may be for speaking, it may be in their career, it may be just sharing their story. They might need to share that story for the first time. When you share it that first time, oh my gosh, so much is lifted. But then when you continually share that story, because you start realizing we people with trauma, me, myself, I'll speak for myself, we hide our story in embarrassment. Like, oh, I don't want people to see this. Oh my gosh. When the fact of the matter is, you got to hold this thing out. I've been through this, and I want to help people. Can you give us just again, freely speaking from the heart, but for those listeners listening that have those limiting beliefs, that don't think that they're capable, don't think they're of value, I want you to speak to them for just a minute. What do you want to share with them?
Well, first, I just want to point out that no matter what your ick is, I like to call it my ick, my baggage, whatever it is, it doesn't do good inside of the suitcase. It was tools. Even though it's a nasty, ugly tool, it's a tool, and it is a blessing not to go through trauma. And I would never say, carry your badge around as if it is you. You are only your trauma. You are not. But you can use that as the hammer to drive in the next nail for the next person, to be able to create a story or give a legacy, whatever it is.
Dude, I
You
love
know,
that.
the people with the trauma, just don't keep it in your suitcase, because it just gets heavier and heavier. As years go on, you just keep putting more in your luggage. And so it gets heavier and heavier.
Dude, I love that metaphor. Don't keep your trauma bagged up in the suitcase. Not only, man, I love that metaphor, man. You might hear me saying that sometime. You're like, he stole that from me. Okay, so, dude, I love that metaphor because if we don't unpack our trauma, our baggage, our ick, I love that too. If we don't unpack it, life is in session for all of us, y'all. Every single one of y'all listening or watching this, life is in session for all of us. So if you dealt with all of your problems right now today, shut them down, got rid of them, in an hour from now, you're gonna have no problems. Okay, but if you don't deal with them, we keep packing them in the suitcase, and this thing gets so heavy we can't even move no more. Uh-oh, have you ever felt stuck? I love what you said. And not only are we holding ourselves back, we can't move. The luggage is so heavy. Not only, but when we pull this stuff out, it's our gifts to share with other people. So now you're not only holding yourself back, but you're responsible for holding back all the other people that can benefit from hearing your story. Your story is yours to share with others. I love what you said about that. I'm going to close this up, but before I do, Dalton, you have any final thoughts on this?
Well, no, I just want to say thank you so much, Greg, for allowing me on the podcast. This is very evolutionary for me in my growth, just being able to share my story again. And I hope, my hope is that one person's life can be changed for me telling my story. And I feel like this is a good avenue for that to happen. So again, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're doing this podcast. Um, Thank you. That's it,
I
and thank
appreciate
you.
it. It was a pleasure to have you on, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I know, I feel comfortable. I'm saying it just bold. I know that your story has already begun to change someone's life right now. already. I'm very, very confident of that. If you guys are listening to just the audio program, check us out on YouTube, Success After Trauma, where you can see the video of us. We like to pick our nose on here so you can laugh at us. And Dalton's like, I didn't pick my nose. No, I'm just kidding. Check us out on Success YouTube, Success After Trauma. Subscribe to the channel so you can see new episodes. And if you or someone you know has experienced trauma and they are ready to share their story so that we can help someone else, please reach out so we can get your story on here. Be great. It's already in you.